The White House is now urging Israel to end its large-scale ground invasion of Gaza and switch to a more targeted phase of the war. White House National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan met with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and the government's war cabinet today in Israel. According to the New York Times, Sullivan did not specify a timetable for the transition, but 4 American officials said Mr. Biden wants Israel to switch to more precise tactics in about 3 weeks. President Biden was asked about that timeline this afternoon.
Do you want Israel to scale back its assault on Gaza by the end of the year? Do you want them to tone it down, move to a lower intensity phase?
I want them to be focused on how to save civilian lives, not stop going after Hamas, but be more careful.
What exactly a new low-intensity phase of warfare would mean in Gaza is still unclear. There are still 137 hostages being held there by Hamas, whose locations are unknown. More than 18,000 Palestinians, most of them women and children, have been killed since the war began just over 2 months ago. Over 1.8 million Gaza residents are displaced, facing dire shortages of water, food, and medicine. As the Associated Press described it, much of northern Gaza is now a, quote, uninhabitable moonscape. If the large-scale bombardment is going to come to an end, what does the aftermath look like? I'm joined now by David Miliband. He served as the British Foreign Secretary from 2007 to 2010. He also served as a member of Parliament. He is now President and CEO of the International Rescue Committee. It's great to have you here. I always enjoy getting your expertise because you've served in so many positions that deal with these kind of geopolitical issues. First, just your reaction to these bilateral relationships are very interesting. The U.S.-Israel probably unique among them, but the U.S.-Great Britain in a somewhat similar situation. Very close, but sometimes there's differences. What do you make of this coming out from the White House today?
Well, I think that we all understand Israel suffered the most terrible trauma on October the 7th, a continuing trauma with the hostages. But the U.S. obviously has to take a global view, not just a regional view. And the scale of the death, the destruction, the displacement that you referred to in Gaza, also the violence in the West Bank, that, I think, is prompting private conversations to emerge into the public domain. And obviously the stakes are very, very high at this stage now because the level of despair, that's a word that's been used by UN officials who are on the ground. We have teams at the International Rescue Committee in Egypt. We've got partners inside Gaza. It's despair, and very sober-minded people are now warning of disorder. There's a Lord of the Flies quality to the dangers. The anarchy is essentially the hint they're making. And I think that's prompting this not just concern, this is a very heightened level of worry about the situation.
It's striking to me because I've now talked to a number of folks in different NGOs. And these are places, your organization and Doctors Without Borders and others who work at Save the Children, who work in dangerous, fraught places. I mean, places where terrible things are happening, who across the board say something along the lines of, this is the most acute form of this kind of warfare crisis that we've ever seen.
Well, it's acute because of the large numbers of people in a very small area and the wide area bombardment that's going on. We've published our watch list today, 20 countries at risk of humanitarian crisis. Sudan is actually number 1. The situation in Gaza, the West Bank, is number 2. Sudan, though, 25 million people in humanitarian need, but a much, much bigger area.
Right.
What you've got to remember about Gaza, 40 kilometers long, a few miles wide, it's the concentration of people there, the complete inability to get out, because obviously other crises, you talk about refugee flows, not in this case.
That's exactly right, and obviously this is something the International Rescue Committee works with a lot. In that watch list, one of the things that you highlight, and we're just coming off the latest global climate conference.
Yeah.
Something I spend a lot of time thinking about and sort of really worries me is when you look at immigration politics right now, in your country as well as ours, right? In the UK, the US, really across the world, you see a rise of extremely virulent, demagogic, anti-refugee, anti-immigrant politics on the cusp of a world that is about to experience mass dislocation from the climate crisis.
Well, you're right to use the phrase climate crisis. People talk about climate change. No, it's a climate crisis for the people that we're serving in places like Sudan at the moment. The critical thing to understand, and this is why our report today is called Facts, Not Myths, it's a myth that America or Britain or Europe are taking most refugees. Of the 20 countries that we're highlighting caught up in conflict, 80% of the refugees are in poor countries, not in rich countries. Refugees from Sudan are going to South Sudan or Chad, very poor countries themselves. And what I think
Yes, this is such an important point.
the Western world has to understand and has to argue, we have a manageable caseload if we choose to manage it. If we choose to be demagogic about it, if we choose to demonize it, we'll not manage it and it'll become a massive problem.
You know, I just saw this, you know, there's something that happened in Pakistan with Afghan refugees,
Yeah.
right?
Pakistan has had 3 million Afghans.
Well, this was the thing that struck me, right? Was at one level the sort of the same demagogic politics, a new initiative from the government to basically mass deport and expel these Afghan refugees, right? And I saw that and I said that's bad and that's gross. But then I also saw, like, there's 3 million Afghan refugees in that country. What they're dealing with is on a scale, like, so remote from what we deal with here. And when you look at the politics of the border in our country, it just makes you really think about how different those scales are.
You're right. Now, we're an international humanitarian agency specializing in conflict. You can't specialize in conflict today unless you also specialize in climate and adapting to the climate crisis, because essentially what's happening is the states most vulnerable to the climate crisis are also conflict states, and they're responsible for about 60% of the world's people in humanitarian need. And unless we're able to help people adapt to the climate crisis, then they're going to succumb to it.
Is there some magic key you have to change the politics of this?
I wish.
If really,
there was, I might be doing a different job than I am now.
Well,
because
I
there
watch
isn't
the politics in your country. I mean, I watch, you know, closely.
I mean, I've been living in New York now. I'm running a US-based NGO, a global
in the UK,
NGO.
yes.
But obviously, the policy is one thing. You've got to get the policy right. Lots of places don't get the policy right. But you've also got to get the politics right. And that's true in developing countries because they have their own politics. I mean, Pakistan has its own politics. So do we. I think the core argument is that either this refugee challenge is managed, is regulated, is legal, is orderly, or it's unmanaged, disorderly, and grips us all. And that's the fundamental divide.
True. Yes, and it's right. It's like gravity, which is that people are going to move, and they are going to seek places where they can live.
Yeah, but remember, people want to stay at home.
The vast majority do.
They don't want to leave their country.
Right.
They've got their language, they've got their roots, they've got their commitments. And what's really tragic is that the countries that are most vulnerable to climate change have contributed, we've calculated, 16 countries, 2% of global emissions have come from those countries. They have the bad luck to be suffering the greatest needs. We've got to tackle it, because if we don't tackle it, it's not going to stay in those countries.
David Miliband, it's always a great pleasure to have you.
Thanks very much.
Come back anytime.